Hello, friends. Welcome back. This is part two, and I'm with Taylor Ray, the Tell It Like It Is podcast. And we're talking, she's a trans advocate. She's also trans herself, playing volleyball and doing some important work up in Seattle. Um, what did your mom say? I'm assuming she's like super religious and you know.
Yeah, I was really, really surprised and really grateful when I came out. She was fine with it. And we actually haven't talked, that's a whole nother story. We haven't talked since my dad died, but she's fine with that. I mean, every once in a while she'll text me and she uses Taylor. She knows that, I've changed my name and I'm doing all these things. And so, I mean, we'll talk again someday and we'll heal that,
How did
but it
you?
has nothing to do with my gender or my identity. When I came out, yeah, so she was the Mormon one of the family, and she kind of, is this stereotypical, like what mom says goes. And so my dad was Catholic, but never converted. And so we practiced Mormonism until I came out when I was 16. And at that point, she's like, "Are you still going to go to church?" And I was like, "What? No." I was like, "Not this church." I was like, first of all, and at that point, I was like, first of all, I love coffee. Second of all, I'm gay. Third of all, I'm brown. Like, take a look around, and it's all white people. And so, and that was a huge thing for me, and a huge stepping stone was. And so I think that once I came out and stopped going to church, and even within the gay community, it's like spirituality and religion is so, it's like they're being gay and being religious are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Like they're like oil and water to a lot of people, right? But I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. I don't actively practice religion, but one of my best friends is a leader of their Catholic choir and went through Catholic school and is very devout Catholic. And I think that those things can coexist. And I think that religion can be a beautiful thing for some people, and it's very important to some people. And so long as they're respecting other people, like who am I to say who they should and shouldn't worship and what is right and what is wrong? I think that, that there's a lot to be said about, like spirituality and religion and like churches. And I think that I've seen a lot of, especially younger people who are still religious, maybe don't go to church as often or don't worship in a church because they feel like their connection is different, and they don't need like a big church to tell them all their lessons, right? And I think I've seen a kind of a movement with that. And I guess I kind of have just picked and chosen what I like about each religion. Like I'm a huge believer in karma, and I think that, I do think that everything does happen for a reason, if there's something to learn from it. And it's hard to not think that there's not a higher power or something, like some sort of energy that's going on, right? Because it's like, it's palpable. You can feel it a lot of times. And I feel like I've been very, very blessed in everything that I've encountered, all the people that I've met. And so I can never say never. I don't think I'd ever say I'm an atheist. If anything, I'd maybe say I'm agnostic, and maybe like I'm not really on either side. I'm just kind of happy to be here. But I love that it means so much to some people. And anything that, that brings you joy and brings you love and allows you to spread that love is beautiful. And I think that that's what it comes down to, is no matter what your beliefs are, what your spirituality is, what you do for work, where you come from, it all comes down to,
Do you want to go to heaven?
if there is one, that'd be nice. But yeah, I think that I have this debate every so often of like, is there an afterlife? What is the reincarnation? Because I mean, if you think about it, like energy, you don't ever lose energy on Earth. So all this stuff that's happening, being alive, like where does that energy go? Like that's just like, that's science. Like that's fascinating to me. And I think that growing up, it was like terrifying to me, because like the idea of like just thinking that big was so scary to me. But I think it's fascinating now. I think that when it comes down to it, like if you're just a good person and spread joy, that whatever good that's going to happen is going to happen.
What was your experience in the Mormon Church? You were there for 16 years.
It was hard. It was this kind of the situation in church, and it's like, how society kind of permeates different groups, and it's like, it was like, it's super masculine, it's super male centric, it's super white centric. Like there were no people of color in the church that I was in, and all the leaders were men, and everyone dressed really conservatively, and like there were some great people. Like I think there's great people in every organization,
And yeah,
but it was hard for me because I knew I didn't belong, and I still felt so othered, and I felt like all the things that they were preaching that were wrong, as opposed, like when it came to like gender and identity and things like that, I was like, I don't know if that's right. Like I don't know if I believe that. I don't know. And so it caused a lot of inner turmoil and trauma for me, because it was the source of guilt, and it was a source of just animosity inside myself, because I was like, well, I can't be gay, I can't be queer, because that's not a way of life. Like that's not acceptable. And so it was really hard on me for a really long time. But obviously I know that there's great people, and there are some things in the church, that in every church, that
so a lot of what I talk about on the podcast, I want us to have like better community, and I put a lot of weight on faith-based community, and partially because that's where we've come from, historically. It's been one of the pillars of community, but also because of what faith-based community says that it believes, right? It's supposed to be a place of love and a place of, all of these things. And somehow it kind of gets lost in the translation. And so when I ask you to talk about it, it's not necessarily because I want to bash a particular religion, but the point is that this institution is there designed to love people, and it's not working.
Right.
So, if someone spent 16 years in my institution and wanted to leave because they didn't feel loved, and the point of the institution is to love people, I want that feedback. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Right. No, absolutely. No, I agree.
I think the church needs that feedback. Just because if we don't have the church, what do we have?
Right.
And like you said, you found your own communities. Trans LGBT people are making their own communities, and I think that's one of the ways, right? If your church and your residential community is not holding space for you, you're going to leave your community, you're going to leave your church, and you're going to go find the place that has space for you.
Right.
There's a lot of people who don't have the means to move to a big city,
Right.
and a lot of people who don't have the vocabulary to just leave their church, like, Mom, I'm not going to church anymore. Your church is cisgender centric and it doesn't work for me. Like, there's a lot of people who's suffering who doesn't have that vocabulary.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking you that question, it's not necessarily because I want you to tell off your mom or the Mormons specifically. It's because this is a part of a real problem that's still, happening. And for a lot of people, in a lot of ways, like you said, the church holds truth. There's a higher power that exists, which the church acknowledges. The church says we're a place of love, but then they couple in these other things with the message.
Right.
So when they sneak in these other things, now people are like, well, they got 2/3 of it right. Maybe I'm a bad person because I have these feelings.
Right.
So now you begin to doubt something natural. Like, you
absolutely
tell yourself, I'm going to be a rebel and believe something crazy. You just felt it innately, right?
Absolutely.
So people begin to go through this inner turmoil, and you're in a community of love, and now the community of love doesn't know how to respond to, okay, he's 15, he says he likes boys. Should we pray for him? Should we excommunicate him? So the church needs our help. We can't just say, oh, the church, they're wrong, and just walk away, because you're leaving another 15-year-old boy there.
Right.
He's like, what about me? Are you gonna speak up for me? So it's important that we when we leave, we still turn back and help the others who are still behind there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it with and why I feel like a lot, especially the younger generations, have an issue with like organized religion, because it gets lost. Like we all have this one goal, or people have that one goal, and then we're like, wait, but why are we preaching this? And why is this good and this is bad? Like, aren't we all like humans? Like, they're not hurting anyone. Like, they just happen to love a different gender. Like, what? And I think that there are some churches that are getting better at that, but it's just the nature of a book that's been translated a bunch of times by humans, and by humans that lived in different eras. So, their beliefs and how they would translate it 300 years ago is different than what it would be today. And so there's people need to, with religion, it's what it comes down to is, are you a good person? Are you spreading love? Are you loving other people? Are you treating everyone the same? That's it. Like, that's every single religion when it comes down to it. That's at the base. Like, that's where you build from it. But then it gets kind of lost in what has, in the rules and the things that have been developed since the founding, right? And it's like, because it also reflects what society was in whatever time that is. And so when I went to Seattle Pacific University, it's actually a Christian school. And so I had to take theology classes, and I thought it was super interesting. Like, when it comes down to it, the Bible is a book, and any book can be studied. And so everyone had to take a Bible study class. And at first I was like, I did this all growing up. I don't want to have to do this. But I had a professor who was like, anyone can take this class, whether you're religious or not. Like, my goal is to study the Bible. And it was a very long time ago, but what I do remember is that it was he fostered this environment that was safe. Like, I was very, very obvious that I was queer, but it was like a safe place. And it was that, like, that's what I believe like needs to be taught, and like what it needs to be broken down into is, are our rules, are our standards, are our values including everyone, and making sure everyone is loved, and making sure that everyone's included and treated the same. And so it's progressing, I think. And I think that kids are amazing. Like, I've gotten to like speak at a few like middle schools and high schools just as like a guest speaker, I guess. And I'm just like, it's so funny to me, because they're always like, oh, like, you're so cool. Like, I look up to you. And I'm like, I look up to you. Like, kids these days are doing things that I wish I could have done when I was their age. I wish I could live my truth. I wish I could have that confidence. Like, I'm amazed by kids these days. It gives me so much hope that these kids are so much more loving and open-minded and accepting than even my generation was not too long ago. And so I think that there's a lot of hope in the future, and a lot of things to look forward to. And I think there's a lot of heaviness in the world right now. There's a lot of things that are not great, but I also think there's a lot of potential, and there's still a lot of hope for future generations.
Absolutely. Every generation is a chance to get it right, and little by little, the truth is permeating, and it's getting there. At the same time, I'm amazed by the older generation's ability to hang on to these beliefs, like not even based in reality.
Right.
It's like, a woman's place is in the home. Like,
right. I'm like, what year is it?
Like, what are you talking about? And, this passes itself off as conservative, and, so it leads to this huge division where people can, say these things, and you're like, it's just pure toxicity, like you're saying.
Right.
It's the work that we're doing, right? And
it's choosing ignorance.
Exactly. And that's why we need more conversations like this.
Absolutely.
More people doing the work. And that's why your work is very important. Now, tell me a little bit about, the role of social media, TikTok. I know you said that it's like, I feel like it's also therapy for you, right?
Yeah,
You're teaching and it's therapy at the same time.
absolutely. It's social media is great because you can reach so many people, and it's also not so great because you can reach so many people, right? It's like it's a double-edged sword, and it's like there are days where I'm exhausted. I can't get on. I can't, I can't do it, and that's totally fine. I think that um, anyone who's thinking about like documenting their journey or sharing their journey, like make sure that first and foremost you take care of yourself, and that you make sure that you're at peace with yourself and that you aren't giving more of you to others than you are yourself, because no one else is going to take care of you. But I have loved the journey and being able to reach parents and reach kids and reach people who are just curious, people who are actively want to learn, who like they're like, I have no idea what a trans person is, but like tell me. It's so beautiful, and it's so like it's great to get those messages, and it really is like therapy, and it's there's something so beautiful about helping other people and being able to give the advice that you wish you had gotten when you were their age. And it's been really, really cool. It's been really, really nice to kind of see other people's journeys and have that sense of community, especially in COVID and quarantine, because it's like, how else are we going to be social? Like I'm stuck in this 450 square apartment. Like I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
And so, getting to meet people from all over the world, and people that you vibe with, and people that maybe don't vibe with, but you're actually having a really, really good conversation, and you're learning something about something that you would have never encountered before. And so social media is great. I think that it's, obviously everything has its downsides, but like, it's so worth it for me. Even on the hard days, it's so worth it to get those messages from people and to help people and to know that I always say, like, if I can make a difference in one person's life, then like it's worth it to me, because sometimes that's all people need. They just need someone to acknowledge them. They just need someone to listen to them. And so social media is a great forum for that.
Do you want to have kids?
I've always wanted to be a parent, and I love kids, and that's I think my biggest. Obviously, I wish my dad would have been able to see me happy, but my biggest part of my grief with losing my dad was knowing that I wouldn't be able to see him be a grandfather, because he was so great with kids and like loved kids. I want kids, but at this point, I want to have kids if I can provide for them, and I could provide a childhood that wasn't as stressful as mine, and as I didn't have an awful childhood, but like we were definitely not very well off. Not that it was my parents' fault or anything like that, but I know that I just want to be able to give the world to my kids if I have them. And I live in Seattle, so I know I maybe not spoil them. I definitely want to spoil my grandkids, but I do want. There's something so therapeutic and so beautiful about being able to teach your kids the things that you learned. And not that my parents made a lot of mistakes, but fixing the mistakes that my parents made. It's not their fault that they made those mistakes. They didn't know any better. But being a parent now, as someone who's healed and been able to learn a few things, like being able to impart my wisdom and my knowledge, not that it's going to be perfect, and I'm probably going to mess things up too, but like you said, it's that every generation is a step forward, and it's like that opportunity to impart that in the next generation. But Seattle's expensive, so we'll see.
So it sounds like when you left home, you've been distant from your family for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then your dad suddenly passed.
Yeah. So my dad and I we had a really, really strained relationship pretty much my entire youth and young adult life. But I was so proud of him. And like we talk about that, like another generation not being able to let go of old values. And I saw once my dad and I lived apart and we got to have space and we got to have the opportunity to miss each other and really, really value each other, we eventually got to have conversations, and he was like wanting to learn more about my life and who I was. And I think that's probably my proudest accomplishment, is the relationship that I built with my dad. And I mean, he eventually like would take me to my drag shows, would go to my drag shows by himself, would like, he would drive up to Seattle to come see me, would come to Pride with me. Like, it was just this beautiful journey of just like, I see that. And so that's whenever I see people like around his age who are super stubborn, who aren't willing to change, I'm like, my dad wasn't even from this country, like was from a completely different society, different generation. But what he saw was love. What he saw was his child. What he saw was I was hurting, and that we had to come to, be able to communicate with each other. And that love and that value overrode everything that he had been taught and all of his values before. He no longer, he saw me as a human. He saw me as, as another person, and as someone that he wanted to get to know and love. And so even though I lost him suddenly, like I value him so much. And I'm so, so thankful that I got to have that journey with him. Because I know so many queer people out there don't get that. They don't get that full circle moment. They don't get that, my dad surprising me at my drag show for the first time ever. Like, they don't get that closure. They don't get that unconditional love that so many people really need and really value. And I love telling my story, my dad's story. I love sharing it with people, because I think it's important for people to see that and see that it's possible. And I know that's what he would have wanted. I think what was really comforting for me when he died was all my friends were like, I know how much he meant to you. I know how cool he was. I knew his journey. And I was like, that's his legacy. Like, that's what he's leaving behind, is that people knew his journey. People knew how he had turned around and how he grew to love and appreciate me completely. And so obviously I wish he was still here, but I know that like his legacy continues.
So him and your mom separated at some point.
Yeah, they separated, like 5 years ago.
So did he speak to your mom for you? Did he advocate? Like,
yeah, so they were like amicable. Like we would get together for Christmas and like get together for meals, but they were divorced and separated. My mom and I's relationship was fine until, I think, honestly, the final straw was my dad dying, and it was just really traumatic, and it was a lot. It forced us to deal with things that we weren't ready to deal with. And so my dad always was a peacekeeper. Like, my mom and I definitely, and my sisters, were all very opinionated and very stubborn. But my dad really always was the peacekeeper and was always like, okay, like, let's not fight. Like, you know how your mom is, or you know how Taylor is, like, let's just like chill. I think if my dad was alive, I think he would have liked to see me talk to my mom sooner than right now. But I also know that he would understand where I'm coming from too. I think there was a lot of, we just built a lot of trust with each other, a lot of understanding, where I felt like growing up, we were just talking at each other and not really listening to each other. And, the last, few years of his life, probably like 7 years of his life, like, I got to have conversations with my dad, and I got to understand him. I got to appreciate him even more. I always knew that he sacrificed growing up, and always knew all those things. But for me, like, being, this different society in the Philippines, like in the Philippines, it's like the man is the provider, and that's it. Like, it's not a lot of emotional connection. It's not a lot of that type of a relationship. And that's what I crave, because that's what I saw all my friends have. All my friends were like super close with their dads. They go shoot hoops, they do all these things. And that's what I longed for. And I didn't get that because was so busy. And it's just like learning a new culture is hard for anyone. And so I had to learn to appreciate his journey, and he had to learn to appreciate mine as well. And that kind of mutual love and mutual appreciation was how we were able to kind of resurrect our relationship.
I'm sorry for your loss. It sounds like, you guys were really close.
Yeah, he was, I still have his voicemails. Like, I saved everything. But I know that every single time I help someone, or every single time I post something, or I help someone something through something, like that's my dad. Like I know that that's my dad's traits. Like that's what my dad imparted on me, was like he always loved me, even when we didn't get along and he thought I was acting too much or whatever when I was growing up. Like it came from a place of love, which I didn't necessarily see back then. I don't think is always the case. I think that there's a lot of, bigotry still within parents in certain generations, but I'm really, really grateful that I got to have that. And yeah, I wish he could have seen me living my full life and being as happy as I am now. But I know that I'm the person who I am because of him. And I know that I'm happy and I'm able to love others and love myself because of him. He had a heart attack. He was in better shape than me. He had a 6 bypass surgery my senior year of high school. And so that's actually what motivated me to lose weight. Was I was like, oh, like this is a threat. Like my doctors were like, you already have high blood pressure. Like you're going to have a heart attack by the time you're 30. His younger brother died in his 40s from a heart attack. And so it just runs in our family. But we didn't expect it at all. It was completely out of nowhere. He wasn't feeling ill. He hiked like every day. Yeah, it was just kind of out of nowhere.
That's a heart condition, some kind of.
What was that?
This sounds like a heart condition.
Yeah, so he had open heart surgery at 50. I think he previously had heart problems, high blood pressure and high cholesterol running on my dad's side of the family. And so it's definitely always an issue that we've all been aware of, but there wasn't necessarily any indicators as far as like, he wasn't like eating poorly or he wasn't like not working out. It just happened.
So what are your goals now? I know you're doing a lot of education work. So what kind of goals are you doing with that?
I think my goal is like I still want to educate people and I still want to do those things, but I think that now my goal is to live the fullest that I can for myself. And I think that's the best thing that anyone can do for a community or for their family or for anyone, is take the time to get to know yourself and love yourself and do everything that you want to do to the fullest, and making sure that like I'm taking care of myself, and everything else will fall into place. The TikToks will fall into place, the social media will fall into place. But I want to make sure that at my core, it's authenticity, and it's letting people in to see, my triumphs and also my trials, but all the while maintaining that like I'm doing this for myself and I'm doing this to share my true self, not what I think people want to see or what people should see or what people want to see or any of those things. Like I want to make sure that whether it's on camera or off camera, that I'm living as authentically as I can.
Yeah, that's what we should be doing. One of everything you've said, one of the things that really resonates with me was that you were saying that being a woman, being feminine is not associated with how you look. Right? I really resonated with that because there's a lot of people out there who are going through things, but that's just at the core where we should be, right? Like who you are inside.
Exactly.
You don't need an outward validation,
right,
to validate what you feel inside. And because sometimes you may not, if you don't feel pretty, if you wake up and look in the mirror and you don't feel pretty, then you feel shitty. If you wake up and you feel you should have your center of identity should be centered without the outward affirmation.
Right. And it's so hard because our society is like built on outward affirmation and wanting those things. And that's, the makeup industry and the movies. And it's all about that. It's all about like achieving a certain look or and that's where the value is. And it's like being able to break that down and find your own beauty and find yourself and being able to feel at home in your own body is such a powerful thing. And and that not even just for gender, it's like this whole thing of like not judging a book by its cover and not being able to, like, you can't tell anyone's story or who they are by just looking at them. And it really comes down to just wanting to, like, be your authentic self and being able to be happy outside of society and outside of normal beauty standards or gender roles or, you know, anything like that. And being able to, and that was my full journey for me, because I grew up wanting to be white, wanting to be straight, and I cannot picture my life not being Filipino and having our food and our culture. And I can't imagine a life where I'm not, you know, at Pride and I'm not like at drag shows. Like, I can't imagine my life not having that. It's, and that was when I feel like I finally was starting to really fully heal and fully realize myself, is that I was proud of all the things that I was persecuted for. I was proud for being brown. I was proud for being, you know, being queer. I was proud of all these things. I know that, like, I'm a strong and powerful and beautiful person because of all those things, and because of all the things I've been through, and because of all the things that I learned, that I'm still continuing to learn. But those are the things that bring value to me as a person. It's not what I look like. It's not what other people think of me. It's everything that makes me. And so, I mean, to anyone that's listening to this, like that, you know, if there's anything that you get from this, it's like, find the value in yourself and find who you are, and try to see yourself outside of society's lens, and try to live yourself as authentically as you can, and trust yourself, and just really, like, seek happiness, because, you know, if you seek happiness within yourself, everything else will fall into place.
Absolutely. So there's a spectrum, right? Trans is a spectrum. Some people do hormones, some people do surgery, some people do surgery at the top, some people do surgery at the bottom. You kind of have to decide what's going to affirm you,
Right.
and what level you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the definition of being transgender is you're not the gender that you're assigned at birth. And so being a gender has everything to do with who you are as a person, you know, in your mind. It has nothing to do with what you look like or how you present or how you dress. And so my idea of a trans woman might be completely different from another trans woman's, and that's great. That's beautiful. That's what's amazing about every community, is that there is no manual, there is no right or wrong way to transition or exist. Like, you get to create your own beauty. And that's the best thing about trans people, is that we're some of the most authentic people that you're going to meet, because why would we ever fake anything? Because we're breaking down everything that we're told we're supposed to be, and we get to build ourselves with who we want to be. And whether it's hormones or surgeries, or it's changing your name, or it's changing how you dress, you can be trans however you want, and anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong.
And I know you mentioned that insurance helped you a lot with your journey.
Yeah, so I have Kaiser here in Washington State. They I think actually they just passed a law in Washington State that every insurance company has to cover some sort of gender affirming care and surgeries. And so obviously my medications were covered, just because all medications pretty much are covered under insurance. But surgeries aren't always, you know, a lot of them are considered, you know, electoral. And so my top surgery and my face surgery were actually paid for partially by my insurance. They were covered. My fat transfer wasn't. I think there's discussions about that maybe changing. And I could have waited, but I just wanted to be done with it. I paid out of pocket for it. I saved a bunch of money. I started GoFundMe. My community is fantastic. They helped me out with that. And I was able to do that. And there's, you know, even if you're on, you know, like state sponsored insurance, like there's plenty of ways. And I love doing that. I love helping people kind of find their way and talk through those things.
How much was it?
Out of pocket. So out of pocket, I paid $8,000 for my top surgery in my face. If I didn't have insurance, it would be well over $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So it saved me a lot of money.
And how much did you raise for your, is it BBL? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. So between all three surgeries, I think my goal was 8,000. I think I almost made it because I wanted to at least pay for my out-of-pocket costs for my insurance. And then I work in real estate. And so I now work full-time in the field. I'm a managing broker, so I manage the team. So I'm not usually on commission. Every once in a while, if someone can't take a lead, I'll take it. And so it just so happened that, I got a couple thrown my way and I was able to use that extra money to pay for my fat transfer.
Make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you should be taking little notes, and this is gonna lead up to your book.
I thought about it honestly. So I wrote an article like a couple of weeks ago on my dad's death anniversary because someone had reached out to me on Instagram, was like, your story is super fascinating. And I was like, how, it's supposed to be a short story. It ended up being like 6 pages, single space. Cause I was like, I don't know how to, and that was just a coming out story. I was like, I don't know how, but it made me realize how much I have to share, how much I have to tell, and also how therapeutic it was to be able to just sit down and cry and write everything out and like process my grief with my dad by sharing his story. And there's no better way for me to carry on his legacy than to share his story. And it was an honor for me to be able to tell that, to tell his story. And I'd love to do that someday. I think that, obviously I'm only 31 next month, so I've got plenty of life to live, but I feel like even right now I could probably write a memoir just for my first
So yeah, especially the journey, from beginning to now. My birthday is June 29th, so that's like always Pride weekend.
Yeah.
So, I lived in New York for a long time, so my birthday and Pride weekend goes hand in hand. And I had no idea about how Pride began, and Stonewall, and this thing that happened in Lower Manhattan. And
Yeah.
I watched some documentaries, read about it, and it was crazy. Like, being gay was illegal,
Right.
and people were like, you would get beat up and thrown in jail and lose your whole life. Like, it's really come a long way.
Right.
And a lot of religion is still perpetuating these ideas. So we need people like you out there to keep doing this work and, doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I agree. I think that there's always room for improvement. There's always work to be done. Like he said earlier, like no change is easy. Like there's going to be tough conversations. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be heartache. There's going to be, work to be done. But, anything that's worth something has to be worked for. And I wish it wasn't the case. I wish it was easy, but I'm willing to put in that work, and I'm willing to continue to share my story. And everyone has their own way of educating. Everyone has their own way of protesting. And I think that, if you're out there and you're feeling like you're queer and you're not doing enough, like literally just existing is enough. Like being happy and being successful is enough. Like that's all you have to do. Being successful and a queer person of color is an act of protest in and of itself, because we live in a world that isn't built out for our success. It's built to oppress us. And so just by existing is an act of protest and is giving back to your community. So don't ever feel like you need to be on TikTok or be on Instagram and do all these things and fight people online. Like just live your life and be happy, and that's enough.
How can people find you? Taylor Ray? Or
yeah, so on Facebook it's Taylor Ray, TaylorRey, and then on Instagram it's and Instagram and TikTok it's Hey Tay Ray, HeyTayrey. Yeah.
Are there any resources out there that were specifically helpful that you'd like to mention?
Honestly, it really was just like, I feel like I was raised by the village that is social media, and it was just like any accounts that I could find that were like really, really influential. I mean, off the top of my head, Rosalind Montoya is someone who's really, really cool. It's on TikTok and really, really helpful. Gabby Tuft is a trans woman on Instagram who was a WWE wrestler and is documenting her journey as far as like she has a wife and kid and obviously was super hyper masculine. And it's been so cool to see that journey of just like, it's not just people who were gay or queer transitioning, it's like heterosexual people who are born male transitioning. And it's so great to see that representation. Those are the first two that come off the top of my head, but there's so many different resources out there and there's so many different accounts out there that you can find to educate yourself, to make you laugh, to make you feel like you're part of something. And just thank you for allowing me to come on here and be on your platform. I really, really appreciate it. And shout out to all the other creators out there and all the people putting in work who are putting, most of them are not getting paid for this. It takes a lot of followers for you to get paid to do this. So most of us are not getting paid to do this and sacrifice ourselves and sacrifice and tell our story. So yeah, thanks to everyone out there.
Yeah, it's about the work, at the end of the day, if you only do it because you got paid, then you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Correct.
So you're doing it because you do the greater good, that's really what it boils down to for me. And the bigger picture, we all have to do our little bit,
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor, so much for joining me today. You've helped me, and, watching your page has led me to look at other accounts, which has led me to like learn so many things. And little by little, I'm still learning and trying to grow, and I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible.
I think that's all anyone can do. That's all anyone can ask for, is just being open-minded and being willing to learn, because everyone can learn. I'm still learning. Everyone can learn something. No one is. When you stop learning, I think that's when you die, honestly. And so keep learning.
Thank you so much. And I want you to stay involved. I really want to grow community and have us be more connected, and everyone has their piece. So I'll call on you again to weigh in on stuff,
Absolutely, anytime.
It's an ongoing conversation.
I agree.
All right, thanks.